For nearly a century, one name defined the gold standard in American garages. It represented more than a logo. It was an ironclad promise that purchasing a tool meant owning it forever. Today, the brand that helped build modern America is a shadow of itself, caught in corporate lawsuits, failed factories, and a manufacturing scandal that left millions of loyal customers feeling betrayed. This story explains how Craftsman rose to become an icon of reliability, and how a series of disastrous decisions brought it to the brink of extinction. The history begins in 1927 with a simple transaction that changed the hardware industry forever. Sears Roebuck & Company bought the rights to the name Craftsman from a small tool manufacturer for just $500. That bargain eventually generated billions. The company registered the trademark and placed it on their highest quality tools to target farmers and mechanics who needed equipment capable of surviving brutal conditions. These tools stood out against the cheap options of the Roaring '20s because they were forged from vanadium steel, a material 50% thinner, yet too hot. By the 1950s, the brand had established itself as an American staple, but in 1953, they made a move that turned customers into fanatics by introducing the famous unlimited lifetime warranty. The policy was bold and unheard of. If a tool broke for any reason, you could walk into a Sears and leave with a brand new one. No receipts or questions were required. This displayed supreme confidence rather than just marketing tactics. Mechanics would intentionally abuse their ratchets because they knew Sears supported them. This policy built a level of trust most modern companies lack, making the brand a permanent fixture in workshops from California to Maine. The post-war housing boom meant every new suburban home needed a lawnmower, a drill, and a wrench set, and Sears was positioned to supply them all. The department store dominated retail, and Craftsman served as its crown jewel. You could not buy these tools anywhere else, forcing millions of people to visit Sears regularly. Top-tier American companies like Danaher and Western Forge manufactured the tools, ensuring the quality matched the reputation. For decades, this arrangement was incredibly profitable. As the new millennium approached, the retail environment shifted, and the leadership at Sears made choices that doomed the company. In 2005, hedge fund manager Eddie Lampert took control of Sears and merged it with Kmart in an $11 billion deal. Lampert was a financial engineer rather than a retailer, and his management style caused controversy immediately. He split the company into 30 separate divisions and made them compete for resources, creating internal conflict at corporate headquarters. Under his watch, cost-cutting took priority over quality. The reliable American manufacturers that had forged the tools for decades were squeezed on price. The focus shifted from making the best tools in the world to making the most profitable ones, and loyal customers noticed the difference. We are uncovering the full timeline of this industrial collapse. So, hit subscribe and ring the bell for more deep dives into business history. We release new documentaries every week. Now, we return to the downfall. By 2010, the Made in USA stamp that had served as a badge of honor began disappearing from the tools. To save money, production moved overseas to facilities in China and Taiwan. The change happened without a press release, but mechanics felt it in their hands. The chrome finish lacked depth, the ratchets had more play in the gears, and the metal felt lighter. Although the lifetime warranty remained technically in place, the spirit of the agreement was broken. Customers would exchange a broken American-made ratchet from 1980 for a mass-produced overseas replacement that might break again in a month? The trust built over 80 years. By 2017, Sears needed cash to stay operational and put its most valuable asset up for sale. Stanley Black Decker, the company behind DeWalt and Mac tools, purchased the brand, for a net present value of about $900 million. The complex deal allowed Sears to sell the tools in their remaining stores, while Stanley owned the future of the brand. Stanley's CEO, James Lorry, knew the public wanted manufacturing back on American soil. He announced a plan to do exactly that, but executing it proved difficult. To fulfill that promise, Stanley Black Decker broke ground on a $90 million factory in Fort Worth, Texas. This facility was intended to be the future of automation. The plan used advanced robotics to forge wrenches and sockets cheaper than Chinese competitors could. They hired hundreds of workers and announced that the V-Series line would roll off the assembly line in Texas. For a brief moment, the brand appeared to be back. They even printed "Made in USA" with global materials on the packaging to prepare for a retail rollout. But operations inside the factory were failing. The technology intended to save the company became its undoing. The automated system suffered from glitches, and the robots failed to handle the high-speed forging process with the necessary precision. This led to delays and quality control failures. While the company publicly touted their return to America, the Texas plant lost money. Then, the pandemic hit, snarling supply chains and making the machinery harder to fix. By late 2022, the factory that was supposed to produce 60 million tools a year was barely functioning. The dream of a fully automated American tool forge died slowly and expensively. In March 2023, Stanley Black Decker announced they were closing the Fort Worth plant permanently. Less than 4 years after the grand announcement, the factory shuttered and nearly 200 employees lost their jobs. The company blamed technical challenges and a changing market, but the message to consumers was that the era of mass-produced American mechanics tools was over. The few tools that made it out of that factory are now odd collector's items on eBay. Production did not return to the glory days, but instead shifted south. With the Texas plan finished, the company adopted a strategy called friendshoring. Instead of bringing jobs back to the Rust Belt, they moved a large portion of production to Mexico. This kept costs low and logistics simpler than shipping from Asia, but it failed to meet customer expectations. Marketing teams worked overtime to frame this as a positive move for North American manufacturing, but die-hard fans remained skeptical. The boxes on the shelves at Lowe's and Ace Hardware came from a mix of global sources, confusing the brand's identity further. Nobody really knew if it was premium or budget anymore. Confusion extended to the legendary warranty. With Sears stores virtually extinct, the new owners struck deals to sell the tools at Lowe's, Amazon, and Ace Hardware. This created problems for customers because staff at Lowe's often did not know how to handle a broken ratchet bought at Sears in 1995. The part numbers did not match, and the systems were unconnected. Stories flooded the internet of customers being turned away or forced to call a hotline and wait weeks for a replacement by mail. The convenience that defined the brand for 60 years was effectively gone. The chaos existed in courtrooms as well as stores. The brand faced legal trouble over its Made in USA labeling. One major class action lawsuit targeted the claim that tools were American-made when they relied on foreign parts. The company had to pivot to the awkward phrase, "Made in the USA with global materials," a legal distinction that highlighted how far they had fallen. These lawsuits damaged the brand's integrity even further. A company that once sold itself on honest value was reduced to Stanley Black Decker has not given up despite these failures. In the last 2 years, they launched the V-Series and Overdrive lines to win back professional mechanics. These tools feature better finishes, tighter tolerances, and designs meant to compete with Snap-on or Milwaukee. They are undeniably better than the products sold during the 2010s. The VersaStack Mechanics set even took home the Best Mechanics Tools Award from Men's Journal in 2025. This indicates the company is trying to prove they can still make quality tools, even if they cannot make them in Texas. In early 2026, the brand exists in a strange limbo. You have the new tools sold at Lowe's and Amazon, which are decent quality homeowners gear. Simultaneously, the ghost of Sears sells a completely different lineup of tools under the same name online. It has become a zombie brand, split between two corporate parents, sold in different boxes with different part numbers. The unified American icon is gone and replaced by a global commodity that is merely acceptable. Buying these tools remains a safe bet for the average homeowner in 2026 because they work, are affordable, and are easy to find. However, the magic is gone for the purists. The old vanadium steel ratchets from 1960 are still working perfectly in garages across the country and outliving the company that sold them. That is the true legacy. The tragedy is not that the brand disappeared, but that it became another logo in plastic packaging, trading on memories of a time when guaranteed for life meant something. The rise and fall of this industrial titan teaches a brutal lesson about modern business. Trust is hard to build and easy to sell. They traded a century of loyalty for short-term profits, and while the name survived, the soul did not. If you want to see more stories about how the biggest empires in history crumbled, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have a massive documentary coming next week that you will not want to miss. Thanks for watching.